Okay, welcome back. So it's time for the third of our date day at the movies, which is actually the middle one. Don't try to think about the math of the timeline, it gets crazy. But again, that's kind of in keeping with the film we watched, where timeline and jumping around and everything was, you know, and that is Baz Luhrmann's biopic Elvis, Elvis Presley. And before we get into it, just for context for both of us, like how big of an Elvis fan are you?
I would say I'm like an average Elvis fan. He was one of the, you know, I grew up in a very strict religious household. He was one of the few, you know, non-Christian artists that we could listen to. Oh, you know, his hymns and his Christmas music, of course. But, and you know, we grew up in the South, so of course, you know, when I was little, we toured Graceland, and you know, I think it's a, I would say, like I said, maybe an average to middling fan of Elvis. There is some theory that he and I share the same ancestral background, which is the Roma people, what people would refer to as gypsy.
Nice.
There is some theory that he was actually like a descendant of that ancestry, so yeah.
All right, I would consider myself, yeah, an average, not fanatical, but I enjoy Elvis.
Right.
I enjoy, and I know I'm alone in this, I love Elvis movies. I love my family and I, 2 summers ago, just watched a whole ton of Elvis movies. That was our theme for the summer. And, you know, they're bad, but they are bad in a unique and amazing kind of way. But I do believe, I think watching those films that summer gave me a greater appreciation for the legend of Elvis, because I think we're of a generation, and we're getting further and further away, of people who were able to see him live, right, or see him perform, and you can see it in those movies just how fucking charismatic this guy was, and how, you can see why he was the king of rock and roll. Yeah. Just, he owns the stage.
Right. I mean, he was beloved.
Yeah, it was in a way that you can't teach someone, you can't, you know, get better at it. He just walked out there and he owned it, and that gave me a lot greater appreciation for him as a performer and his music. I think Can't Help Falling in Love is one of the most beautiful love songs ever written. You know, so I have a lot of affection for Elvis, and I also have a lot of sympathy for him because, you know, especially towards the end of his life, this is something I talked with my mom about. Especially towards the end of his life, Elvis became a joke. Right. And people just ripped into him. As we tend to do with celebrities when they commit the crime of getting old and gaining weight.
Well, and I mean, one of the things in the movie it goes into is like the state, the level of depression that he had reached. And you know, it's one of those things.
It's one of those things. And we'll talk about this as we kind of talk about what goes on in the movie. I love those Elvis movies. Right. But you ever watch a Judy Garland movie and you look at her, and even though she is bright and singing, you can just see the torment that poor child was going through. Right. You can just see it in her face. It's just there. And I got that a lot watching the Elvis movies, is that, yeah, he's doing a beach movie and he's dancing around, but you can look at his face and just see that there's a loneliness and a sadness and a depression there that, you know, that I don't think a lot of people truly understood at the time. And, you know, mental health practices not being anywhere near what they are today. Right. Back then. So,
well, and an awareness of things like manipulation and, like, you know, we didn't know anything about the financial abuse that singers were going through and whatnot.
So yeah, and that is I bring that up because that is the basis of this movie. One of the reasons I was very hesitant to see this movie is, you know, I didn't want to see another movie that just kind of, another biopic that just kind of said this guy was an ass and a pig and everybody hates him and he deserves to be, you know, he doesn't deserve to be the hero that you think he is. This movie takes a very sympathetic stance on Elvis.
Very much. And I mean...
And it has a very clear, because it's a Baz Luhrmann picture.
Right.
So there is a very clear hero and villain.
Right.
Very clear. You know, he is not subtle.
And Tom Hanks.
Tom Hanks as Colonel Parker, his manager. Yeah, you just hate this fucking guy.
Dude, I've never hated Tom Hanks like that.
It's hard to hate Tom Hanks, but
seriously, we were like, I think this is the first movie where he is just flat out villain. Like, he's been, you know, a jerk. He's been a jerk in some movies before, but he's never been like just a flat out villain.
And yeah, and here it is.
So I think that the fact that he was in so much makeup and prosthetics helped.
Yeah.
Kind of, because you just can't look at Tom Hanks at his regular face.
Yeah, it's like Jimmy Stewart being the villain.
Yeah.
You know.
But yeah, this is a hard review for me to do because I think that the acting was phenomenal. Austin Butler as Elvis was just...
He did a phenomenal job.
It was breathtaking. I feel like he never crossed over into caricature.
And we talked about this with Elvis. That's a very hard thing to do. You know, just because he had such a distinctive voice, such a distinctive vocal pattern, you know, that it's so hard.
Carrying himself.
Yeah, it's such a hard person to play without
parody.
Without crossing that line into Saturday Night Live parody.
And
you know,
he really never did. At one point, you'd like go, he starts to look more like Elvis than Elvis does. Like, and he looks so much like him, and they age him so subtly throughout the movie that it's never this like abrupt change.
Yeah.
He's charismatic, he's heartbreaking, he's, you know, sincere. That seems to be the word of the day here.
Yeah, very sincere in his performance.
So, just great. Olivia, I'm forgetting her last name. The Priscilla Presley actress, she was like somehow was able to portray teenage to adult Priscilla pretty well. The costuming was gorgeous and shockingly not over the top. Pretty right on gear. Which
again, very hard to do, not only for a period piece, but a period piece featuring a person known for
his kind of flamboyant style.
Flamboyant, you know, costumes. Yeah, so
they really, you know, one thing we'll get into a little bit is the influence that Beale Street and black culture had on Elvis and what he did. Like, they did a really good job of that, and talking about like why he was depressed and why he gained weight in terms of drugs. They did a really good job on that. But especially the first hour of this movie, I hated this movie. And it's not anything to do with any of the people in it. I hate the Baz Luhrmann
style.
Right. The over-the-top, flashy, jerky, spinny, like, you know...
The best way I could ever describe it is the first chunk of any Baz Luhrmann film, you always feel like you're on something.
Yes. And
like,
I mean,
I can't imagine
the point.
I can't imagine watching one of these movies if you're stoned. Because it would fuck your head up. You know? And this one...
I feel like that's the point. I feel like that's what he's trying to do. He's bringing in this big, larger-than-life story, this larger-than-life atmosphere. But I don't know. I feel like it takes away from what he's saying. I
don't know if that's his intention. I don't know what his intention is, because my general feeling of Baz Luhrmann films, and I'm speaking of Strictly Ballroom, Moulin Rouge. I did not like Romeo plus Juliet, so I'm not even gonna, I won't compare that one. All of them, and this one, they have that manic opening, like you say, where we talked in the last review about Aristotle's, his Poetics and his 6 elements of theater. Aristotle puts spectacle at the bottom and says that's the least important thing that you need. Baz Luhrmann always puts it, ironically, right at the top and right at the front.
Yeah.
Front loads the movie with this crazy editing, like you say, spinning, jerking, jumping around, split screens, all over the place. You're like, whoa, 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 whoa. And then he slows it down, and then you can actually get into the characters and the story and the relationships. And then you start, like, I remember hating the first 20 minutes of Moulin Rouge the first time I saw it. And then once it stopped jumping around and acting like a kid with too much sugar, then you're like, okay, I dig this. But yeah, the first hour or so of this thing, and this is a long-ass movie.
What,
it's
2.5?
A fucking long-ass movie. It went nuts. And there were certain spots where that kind of editing and that kind of visual storytelling is beneficial. Like when he was talking about when they were really quickly jumping over
the movies in Hollywood.
Yeah.
And it was the style of the movies in the 60s, that super colorful.
Yeah,
super,
and so you're like, and they use like the weirdness. I forget which one it is, but there is one Elvis movie which is like so fucking weird. It's like where he's living with some chick. I don't remember, but it's so fucking weird, and he uses visual cues from that movie to mix with his own weird ass style. So it works there.
Right.
Or when he's doing the montage of him performing, doing the world the tour of
the fly-in tour, like
and he's like
with the jumpsuits.
Yeah, it's quickly cutting between all the different jumpsuits. Yeah. Okay, showing us the passage of time, showing us the bigger than life aspect of it. Okay, it fits there. But this first hour of where we're trying to get our feet on the ground and trying to understand what's happening, whose point of view we're seeing the story from, who's talking, it makes it so hard to connect with anything that goes forward.
I think that he's really leaning into Colonel Tom Parker got his start in the carnival world, and it's leaning into that, the kind of, bright, shiny, look over here while I steal your wallet kind of like, I mean, and he does, there's some cool touches in that. Like, he speaks the Carney language, and there's good visuals, but it's the kind, there's just parts where your head hurts and it's crazy, and
you just want them to stop for like a minute.
Just be like, I want to know what's happening. Okay, and then you get to the story, and when you can pick things out of it, you're like, oh, okay, all right. His mom and him had to move to a part of the town where he was surrounded by black people. Okay, so then he grew up with these black kids, and so he was immersed in black culture, and that's where he found himself and he found his voice. Okay, I get that. And that, like, there's just all these little aspects of it that you finally kind of get. And there's some too that seem like they're over the top, but were actually things that happen, like the girls, going crazy and fainting at his concert.
Oh yeah, that happened. But like
Elvis the pelvis.
Well, like a minute ago, you were talking about the great job of the actress playing Priscilla. I can't say that she did a great job because I don't feel like she ever had enough screen time.
Yeah, she had very
to really have a character. She was just kind of there.
Yeah, they don't go into Priscilla very much. I'm sorry, that was a big yawn.
They really don't go into anything very much aside from, which is fair because it's the centerpiece of the movie, the relationship between Elvis and Colonel Parker.
Right.
So it's understandable, but again, I feel if you let a few scenes breathe, I think there's a problem with a lot of biopics, is that they try to do everything from the person's life.
Right.
Instead of telling a specific point in that person's life. And so the film always feels either overlong or rushed. Now, this film kind of picked its subject matter and said, we're going to talk about the Elvis-Parker relationship.
Right.
That's what we're really looking at here. And so because of that, it had a focus, but that focus got spread out so much with, you know, all of this.
That being said, I did get invested enough into the characters, you know, the people in the story, that I did have real emotion concerning them towards the end of the story.
Like I say, from about the middle on, I can't remember where it happened, but I think it's when he was conning him into working in Las Vegas, or I think it might have been right around the time they were talking about him doing the Hollywood movies, and then now that happened, they were hits, and then they dried up, and we're moving on.
Right.
You know, from about that point on, I suddenly thought to myself, wow, I'm actually kind of enjoying this all of a sudden.
When you see him trying to pull away from Colonel Parker.
Yes.
That's when it starts to get interesting. Although, you know, and I really need to go back and do some research on it, like he did get into legal trouble because he refused to, like, kind of whitewash his act.
Yeah.
Even though he was white, he was influenced and embraced the influence of black culture, and he refused to kind of like take that away. Yeah, he didn't. Yeah, no, that is true. That happened. And so I'm not saying he's like the white savior or anything like that, but I think that he was.
Well, you made the comparison to 8 Mile,
right?
To this film.
It's yeah. Which I mean, I'm contributing a slack to this, and so he probably feels a lot of the comparison too. You know, a white kid who is growing up in a black community, and you know, you're immersed in that culture, and you are, because you're white and because you have that privilege, you're able to be more successful. And they do talk about that.
Yeah.
Like he's got the B.B. King. He's talking to B.B. King, and he's like, man, I would love to sing that song. And he's like, well, if you did, you'd make way more money than this black kid who's singing it. You know?
Well, he even says it when they're talking about wanting him to tone down his act and be the new Elvis. And he says, well, if I don't do this, they're going to throw me in jail. And B.B. King says, they're not going to throw you in jail. They'd throw me in jail for walking on the stage. But too many people are making money off of you. They're not going to, you know, they're not going to throw you in jail for this.
No. And they didn't. I mean, they sent him to the army.
Yeah.
But they didn't throw him in jail. And...
that is a sticking point, and this could be just the history I've heard. And it could be, you know, because as they call him, Parker was the Snow King, so you never know. But I'd always heard that the story was Elvis voluntarily went to war because he was an American. He was proud to be an American.
That was the deal struck by Colonel Parker.
So yeah, but I'm saying I don't know if that part is true, or if that's, you know, it's one of those things. I don't know if it's myth or truth or what have you.
I don't know that anyone voluntarily goes to war. You know,
a lot of people did back in the day.
But no, I think you see so much of it, and it is really heartbreaking. It's like it kind of reminds me of the Britney Spears thing, with her being under the conservative.
Yeah, it's very much in that same.
You know, even with the fact that their owners, their managers, both made them perform in Las Vegas for how many years?
Yep.
You know, like having someone control you so thoroughly and having no way out from underneath it. You know, no matter how hard you try and no matter how talented. And he was exquisitely talented.
I'd say one of the 5 most talented people to ever live on the planet. However you rate these things.
And the fact that he was just used as a commodity, like it just, how far could he have gone? How long could he? I mean, he'd probably have passed away by now. You know, he would be nearly 100 years old. But how far could he have gone?
What could his career have been?
Right.
What could he have been if he had people managing him who cared about him and actually took care of his health? Of course, you know, I hate to say this, but you could also go the opposite way. To show business is a cutthroat business. Would Elvis have been who he was had it not been for someone like Parker who knew how to play the game so well?
You know,
it's one of those, you know, damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of situations.
I think that he eventually would have, I don't know if he would have gotten the notoriety as fast as he did, but he was very talented.
But you know, we know it now. There are a lot of talented people who never break through. You know, there could be thousands of singers or actors more talented than the most talented person we see, but for one reason or another, lack of representation, lack of opportunity, just never break through. So it's one of those things where you gotta wonder, without Parker, as evil as he was and as horrible of things as he did, would we have Elvis? So it's one of those difficult questions to ask in hindsight.
You know, I would say up to like maybe the mid-50s. But my thinking is, like, what good could he have done for civil rights if he had been allowed to perform and do the things that he wanted to do? You know, trying to, you know, and this could be drummed up for the movie, but he seemed to be a person who was really trying, you know, not trying to take from the black culture and not give anything back. He really was concerned about social justice issues and civil rights, and, you know, his friends and the people he knew on Beale Street. Like, you get the impression that he wanted to be helpful, he wanted to do that, and he was just, yeah. So could he have done more? Yeah. If he had been given the right?
Yeah. If you had people around him who weren't just, you know, pumping him full of crap and.
Oh, that's heartbreaking, right?
You know, but yeah. So this is a hard movie to kind of rate, because there are some really great parts, but there is a lot of stuff that makes me go, I don't know if I'd ever watch it again.
Here's a question.
Okay.
Is the true villain when it comes to Elvis Tom Parker, or is it Vernon Presley? Because Tom Parker literally called himself the Snowman, gave no impression that he wasn't doing anything other than trying to raise money. And his dad, Vernon Presley, who should have been looking out for him and keeping an eye on him and making sure he stayed safe, went along with everything Vernon said.
That's a hard question to ask. And you can see that in so many stories of actors, singers, you know, athletes, you know.
I just don't, I guess from a parental perspective, I don't understand someone who is willing to compromise their child's safety or happiness for money.
Yeah. So it's a hard question. So, but once again, you know, kind of like we were talking about with Vengeance, it's a movie that has us talking.
It's true.
There's a lot to talk about. It gets you thinking about things. So I don't know if that's ever a bad thing.
I guess my question. Oh, food truck park. Sorry, this is the bad part about drive home reviews. We're driving past things. I guess the question is the movie making me talk about it, or is Elvis and the story of Elvis something that's interesting?
Yeah, but what spurred that was the film. So.
So, I don't know.
So yeah, I don't know. So I think we kind of hit that point, and now I have to ask you the hard question, and you can't get out of it. So
like
final grade for Elvis.
I love everything about this movie except the way it was made. I gotta go C.
C.
I'm gonna go C because I love the acting and the costumes and the music. Oh, I love what they did with the music, having modern artists cover Elvis songs.
Well, they didn't so much cover as they sampled.
Right, and I honestly, Austin Butler, I would have never have, like, you know, he's a Nickelodeon teen drama fella. I would never really have thought he could do this well, but he was like, he was great. He was, I don't know if he'll ever be able to act something other than Elvis again, but he did a great Elvis.
He did. He was.
But I just, like, I did not like the presentation of the movie at all. I don't like having Tom Parker as the narrator. I don't like having, and he's the narrator talking to us as the audience and blaming us for
for everything.
Like, just nope. C.
Okay, fair. So for one of the first times, I think I'm going to go a little higher than you.
Oh.
But just a little. I'm going to C+.
Okay.
I agree with absolutely everything you said. There's not a thing you said that I disagree with. But the reason I bump it up just to that little bit is it did make me feel.
Okay.
It really, the emotions I felt for Elvis and for the situation he was in, and that was all very real. And I think that even if the movie is bad, but it gets you to have an emotional connection, I think that's good. And one where I don't feel like I was manipulated into it or, you know, anything like that. I genuinely had the feels during this. But I do agree with everything you said. Great acting, great cinematography, great costuming, great makeup, but the way it was made, it just, it made it very, very difficult. So yeah, I'm going C+. So, all right. So, there you have it. Wonderful date day at the movie. Sorry I kept adjusting the camera during this. This clamshell thing is really, giving me a rash. Like, I keep trying to stop it before it clamps shut on the thing. I've been having that problem, so I don't know. I need to find a new phone holder, I guess, for these things. But anyway, so at least the camera didn't die in the middle of it. Like with Bob's Burgers. Yeah. So anyway, so thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining me, my love. And as always, drive safe, and we will see you at the movies.